Hello, everybody. It's Deloaded here, and this is another episode of the DonFuer podcast. Today, we're talking to a longtime 2B2T player who is, you know, has had a complicated past. He's somewhat controversial. It's Bezopazan, everybody.
I can't believe you only said somewhat.
Yeah,
Wow.
well, I was trying to be nice. um,
You don't have to go easy on me, D. Don't worry. I hope this podcast is going to be very entertaining to your viewers. I feel like we have a lot of different viewpoints on stuff that kind of clash at times. So
I think so. Yeah, we definitely have very different philosophies, but we're trying to talk to everybody here. So that's just how it goes.
that's the way it should be.
Yeah. So tell me, when did you join 2B2T, and what was those first few weeks like?
So I joined in late 2014. A lot of my memories from back then. I was really young at the time. I was only around 13, 14 years old. So I don't quite remember a lot of the early stuff, but except for a lot of the pivotal moments. So I actually joined to be from a magazine that I found on a school field trip. It was called The Advanced Minecrafter 2.0, and at the back of the magazine they had different pictures from Minecraft servers, Minecraft builds, and 2B2T was featured twice. And
Wow.
the descriptions for both of those were really interesting. Clearly for a young kid to read, it's like a Minecraft server where you can do whatever you want, right? It's an anarchy server. There's no other experience like it. And also at the time, I was looking for video games where you weren't really on a set path, right? I really liked sandbox video games and games where the community kind of creates the fun that you have with the game.
Hmm.
And so that really is hard to find. And 2B, in my opinion, is probably the closest I've ever found to something like that, where you're just simply given the tools, and then the community kind of dictates what you do, what your story is, and you have a really big say in it as well, like personally. And so that first week was definitely very impactful in terms of
Well, what did you
my
say? Did you say what year it was that you joined?
yeah, it was 2014. It was
2014.
definitely impactful in terms of like my enthusiasm for the server going forward.
Hmm.
I actually didn't start playing on 2B consistently until much later that year, probably around December and maybe going into early January, because the server at the time that I joined, I think it was around October, November, was super duper laggy. It was almost unplayable and not something that I was used to in other Minecraft servers that I played on, which wasn't many at the time because I had just bought the game pretty much. But I decided to play 3B3T in the meantime. It was like an alternate anarchy server that was run by Tristan and Pyrobyte, and it was being advertised in 2B2T chat.
That
And so I
existed
joined.
back in
Yeah,
2014.
it did. It
So
did.
is that the first 2B clone?
You. I mean, Constantium, I think, was around. In some
Constantium wasn't started until
right.
2016.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, then I guess yeah. I guess it is like the first 2B clone. If Constantium wasn't around yet,
That's
and
crazy.
it was actually really small too. It was only like a 3K by 3K map, so there really wasn't a lot of like building really big bases that lasted a really long time. But of course, to me, 3K by 3K at the time felt really big because I didn't really have a grasp on the distances between different bases and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I joined 3B as playing for like a week, and that my first experiences on there were meeting Kane's Law. Actually, Kane's Law was one of the first people I ever met on 2B2T, and I met him. He was building a base with this chick named Loreny,
Hmm.
and I've never seen her account again. It was just one of those people that you see once and then you just never see them online ever again.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And they were building some sort of like hut together. Maybe it was like his girlfriend or something. That would have been funny. I don't know. I've never asked him about her. But they were building a little hut, and I introduced myself, and I made instant friends with them. And looking back, and this is a common theme with a lot of the people that I met early on. It's really hard for me to tell whether they were being friends like as ironic sort of thing, or if it was like true like honest friendship. But of course, at the time, I really felt like it was honest friendship. Uh, and from there, we kind of went out to this mesa biome that was nearby and set up our first base. And that's where I ended up meeting as well Drew Bookman and Brunillan. And
Interesting.
they also stayed at that base that we had at the Mesa base. That was like literally 300 blocks from the spawn area, and I had the like I had the thought that like, oh man, we're untouchable. We're like 300 blocks away. No one's ever gonna come out here, and it's just such like a silly mindset now because even new players coming in know that's not a far distance. But you know they've been indoctrinated with FitMC and
Right.
they they are aware of the server, whereas I only had the excerpt from a Minecraft magazine.
Right.
So I was just kind of going off of stuff that I barely knew about the game.
Yeah.
And so we had that little Mesa base, and then it probably lasted for about a day or two until XOXP, Sleepy Little Fox, and the Fox all arrived. The whole trio on horseback and fucking dumpstered the base while we were online and like pretty much ran us out of there. Like tried to kill us, tried to bed trap us. It was pretty crazy. And that was my first experience kind of getting grief on Minecraft was by XOXP, which is kind of funny.
Hmm.
And his fox minions and it kind of scattered us. We all me, Canes, and the Lauren chick all ran out probably pretty much next to the world border around 3K, and I met Victor. What is Victor 96? I think that's the numbers at the end of his name. But yeah, Victor 96. He had like a little base out there, and he was really cool. He kind of invited us in, and these were all people that I considered friends, but would later turn out to be secretly making fun of the fact that I was like a little kid. But yeah, so
So
so then I kind of migrated onto the actual server from there. But those were kind of my early experiences with
it's
Anarchy.
crazy that there was this 2B2T clone all the way back in 2014. A lot of people don't think about that type of thing until post Rusher, you know. So that's interesting. I had never heard
Right,
that before.
and it was made by 2B players, right? It was made by Tristan and Pyro, and
Right.
I
And
don't
it sounds like it was a
quite.
bunch of 2B players on it. Like it sounds like it was all just 2B players.
Yeah, it pretty much was all 2B players, and I don't quite remember the circumstances for making it. I don't know if it was because of the lag or if it was just
Uh-huh.
like a temp server, like while the server was down or something. But I know that it wasn't meant for long term. It was just kind of like a temp server to just fuck around on.
Yeah, it may have just been I don't know. But that's really really interesting. So then
Yeah,
from there you transition to actually playing on 2B itself. What
right,
was
right.
the average player count like back then? I mean, how many people, if you just logged in on a random afternoon or after
Uh,
school or something,
You
how
know,
many
it's
people?
hard. It's hard for me to accurately say, but I can definitely say that it's nowhere near what it is now. Obviously, it's probably more around the 50 to 60 range, if that. Um,
Hmm.
and even then, it was still super duper laggy. People could get away with doing a lot more to the server without it being
But
detected.
there would be like 50 people online when you checked.
I mean, I believe so. Yeah,
Well, that's kind of a lot.
yeah. I mean, they had a consistent player base back then, and they still had new people coming in too. Because around 2014. They had that whole article, the fucking there was some sort of article that
Game
came out
Game
at the time.
Informer.
Yeah.
I know
And
Game.
so people were coming in from that, and so it wasn't necessarily like a very low amount of people. I mean, there were new people coming in from that, and also James Russell's blog also was kind of a thing that lured people in. So
Hmm.
there was a consistent amount of people on. It was kind of rising to some degree.
That's very very cool. That's very cool. I see. I figured that's more than I would have expected. I figured back in the day it would have been like, oh, there's 10 people online or something.
Oh
Because,
probably earlier than that. There weren't now. Whenever the tyranny shit went down with the back door and all that, there were literally like tens, if that many people on. Like the server was actually really dead
yeah,
during that.
yeah. I know in Rush's first video, there's like 20 people on.
I
Um,
I distinctly remember that
oh,
because
were you there on that day? Like you were?
I wasn't there on that day, but I remember around that time joining and seeing just like the drastically low player count and thinking, man, this server's dead.
Uh-huh.
Time to move on. Time to move on and do something else. Find another game like this. I remember like like checking in on it and it just being completely like just like a dead zone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious about that particular time period and your experiences in that time period because I joined in 2016, but I didn't join like I joined like once or twice or something, and then I didn't start regularly playing until December of 2016. So I missed, you know, the majority of all of that. I I had followed it, but I wasn't, I didn't know what it was like to be in that well, like what so you were probably a veteran, right?
I mean, you could literally before Rusher joined, you could literally sleep in a bed and turn it to day because there would be times when nobody was online. Like it was seriously that like hollow on the server pre-Rusher. Um, and actually, that was probably one of the only times that I was actually somewhat active on the server between uh me deciding to leave at like the end of 2015, like midish end of 2015, and then also the Rusher era, because I actually decided to leave prior to me just checking in and joining the server or whatever
mm-hmm.
because of Sato 86. I was in a group called Shenandoah, and he recruited a lot of the members of Shenandoah to his group, pretty much everybody except for me and like one or two other Spurgs. And I was really butthurt about it. And of course, when you're young, you don't really understand a lot of the core mechanics of the game or a lot of like social dynamics as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just kind of like so angry, like so unaware, and I would just come to spawn with like protection 2 gear and like LARP and shit and like fucking like spam his DMs with like hate messages and whatnot.
Yeah. So okay, so
Just a lot of
he
like
thought you
toxic
were
cringe.
cringe or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. And I was on his KOS list. And one day at spawn, he found me with like several other goons at this like spawn base. Chased me up a lava cast, and then I ended up jumping off and logging. And by the time I logged back in, Henry had dug like this huge hole to bedrock, pretty much, where I jumped. So it was pretty much surefire death at that point. And I had a bed set at that spawn base, and they were like, "Man, we're gonna bed trap this just in case." And sure enough, I'm bed trapped, and so I got really upset over that, like really pissed,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of quit. Uh, and then would check in occasionally, like I said, checking in and seeing the server's dead pretty much, and there's no reason to come back.
Yeah.
Um, and then the whole Rusher thing happened, and I joined very briefly around that time when Veteran Cube was around because obviously that's
You
a
would have
really
had
interesting
veteran
time
queue,
to.
right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
I had Veteran Cube. And that was very brief. That didn't last very long,
No,
and it was
it wasn't even the whole year, right? It didn't even last the
no,
whole year.
no. It was a very controversial time to be playing 2B. It's a lot. It's very similar to how this year's been, where it's a huge controversial change that's disrupted the community, and it's made a lot of people second guess whether this is something they wanted to commit time to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something at the time when Veteran Queue was removed. I was like, man, the server's not the same. It's never going to be the same. It's not. There's no way I'm going to be able to join this because at the time, I mean, I didn't have a job or anything. I was a kid, and
Right.
I didn't have the income to put $20 into a server every month. So I was like, man, I'm just gonna find something else. So a lot of that time when Rusher was playing was me spending time playing 9B9T
Oh, uh-huh.
instead. I
Okay.
actually have like a lot of history on that server. I joined like the first week it opened up. So a lot of that time in 2016 to early 2018 was spent on 9B.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For me, it was like I joined twice, I think, during that summer, and I made it out of spawn one time, and some guy in iron armor killed me. Like I was at a rest stop with food, and it was like 20,000 out. It was legit kind of far out, but it was on a highway and an overworld highway, and this dude in iron armor who was obviously a rusher, like, obviously, but he had the fucking veteran shield or something, He
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crafted that banner just to pretend to be a veteran, and he killed me. I think that's indicative of the entire Russia war. It was like mostly new players killing the other new players because they wanted to act
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
there were no real sides in that except for the pre-June side. Like the pre-Junes obviously all worked together for the most part, but a lot of the new players just had no organization, and it was pretty clear they all just kind of wanted to join and fuck around. And
Yeah,
it's kind of something you have to get out of your system when you join the server for the first time. Which the pre-Junes, I mean, they already knew how the ropes worked
for
on
sure,
2B.
for sure. So you left to play 9B, and then when was it that you eventually started to play again?
So I came back in early 2018 as a result of iTavix and Jared 2013. I had a base on 9B9T with iTavix, and it ended up getting griefed by these fucking Australian dipshits. And
Okay, so worsened,
iTavix was
worsened
no
basically, or
different Australian griefers actually, believe it or not. But iTavix was like, "Hey, do you just want to come play 2B2T? Like, we have some stuff on there, and like I can get you geared up if you want to come play." I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he gave me like a kit and some like basic materials, and I was like, "All right, sweet." And that's also the time that I ended up changing my name as well from Dr. Enderpickles to Bezopazan.
oh, but your
Uh,
show, you kept calling your show Dr. Enderpickles though.
yeah, yeah, kind of as a homage to that username, and that's also like I didn't want to go back and change all the titles because I introduce it as that show at the beginning every time. So it's kind of confusing if I were to go back and retroactively change all of them.
Right.
It's not a name that I'm necessarily embarrassed by now, but I think at the time I was like, damn, I'm just gonna change my name because last time I was on, everybody was making fun of me, and I just want to change it and just to not be a laughing stock anymore.
I don't think anybody
Um,
like anyone that
oh
is
well, yeah,
left who remembers that,
that's
but
clear now, but D,
yeah.
you have to think like at the time, my like P brain was like not aware of like how like insignificant that is.
Yeah.
And so I ended up changing it to something like even LARPier. And I mean, I like this name now. You know, I've stuck to it, right? Um,
Is there
Definitely
a
a lot more
rationale
than the
behind
last name.
is there a rationale behind the current name, Bezopazan?
Well, first of all, it's not as cringe as Doctor Ender Pickles. I mean, I made that when I was a little kid, and it's kind of cringe. But
I like
Visa
Dr.
Pazan,
Enderpickles. No, Dr. Enderpickles makes sense. You're
why
Dr.
though?
Enderpickle. It's just a funny name.
It is a funny name. I really
Bezopazan,
thought it was
I'm not
clever at
sure
the
what that
time.
is. It sounds like it's not an English word.
It isn't actually. It's I actually don't remember what the I actually don't remember what the origin is. A lot
Oh,
of the stuff, a lot of the like times when I name stuff, I just throw like something in Google Translate and just like make it spit out in like some random language. But I
uh-huh.
believe Bezopazan means harmless, right? So it's like I wanted to choose a name that was like harmless or like
Jeff
pacifist or
Bezopazan?
like no,
Jeff
actually
Bezos?
no. I considered that actually. I actually stole it from Jeff Bezos. Bezos himself.
Yeah.
But I wanted to actually go with something that was like more of a pacifist route because when I came back, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna be like this pacifist and not like try to attack anybody and just like try to make friends and like have like a whole new way of playing because I was just such like a little shitter before that because I just didn't care about like the politics or the lore of the server. And I
Hmm.
guess that also kind of came with like Rusher joining and Fit getting big. You know, it kind of changed how a lot of people saw the server.
Oh,
And
for
so
sure.
when I came back, I had a very different mindset in how I approached things. It's like, okay, well, this is a different game now. This is not the same game that I played, right? I don't want to like just I don't want to play just casually anymore. Like I want to like take this character that I'm making on here seriously because you know, like I said earlier, this is a game environment like no other, right? Like
Hmm.
you develop the story, but so does everybody else who plays, and that was the mindset that I was kind of starting to get into at the time. So got a kit on 2B. Met a guy on the highway. I don't recall what his name is. Actually, I'm gonna look in my screenshots as I tell the story, and I'll probably be able to tell you because I actually got access to an
Well,
old
and
hard drive recently.
when you came back, the thing was you now had elite status because you were a pre-junior.
Yes, that's also something that was like that made me want to keep playing was that I've actually been there for a while, right? Regardless of
Yeah,
how much I actually contributed in like the grand scheme of things, I had experience like pre-rusher. I got to see
exactly.
the server pre-rusher. I got to play on it pre-rusher,
And
and I had a perspective that not a lot of people had.
back then that meant something.
Oh yeah, and
Like,
it still
yeah.
kind of does to this day. I mean, not as I don't think as much,
It
but
was no, it was like there were people that were straight up if you're, if you're a rusher, you're shit, you're worthless, you're um
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember experiencing some of that where
Okay, so okay, so I met this guy on the highway. His name was Ender Senpai. Okay, that was his name. And he invited me to this base, and I had no idea what it was at the time, but I'm pretty sure it ended up being Sniper's Peaceful Islands. It had a huge gold farm at it, and it was like at a mushroom island. And I mean, it might not be the Peaceful Islands. I think I remember finding it actually on the archive at some point, so I might be able to correct you on that at some point. I just know that it was a big island based near spawn, and it had a big gold farm, and I used it to kind of grind up materials again. And from that point on, I also mentioned, of course, I was talking to Jared at the time, and he was another reason that I started playing 2B again. We started to like communicate on the server for the first time in a very long time. We had briefly became acquaintances during the time that I was at Shenandoah. He visited like once or twice while the base was active on Dark Joe, and at the time I didn't really like correlate the two. But obviously, at that point, Dark Joe and Jared were already kind of synonymous with each other. So we ended up, coming back together in a different way. I started speaking to him for the first time on Discord, and we became very close friends. And that started to that's when I kind of started to become a little bit more controversial in the community, I think, when I started to become friends with Jared, not because of the things I was doing, but because of the things he was doing that I either wasn't aware of or that I was passively sitting by watching.
yeah.
I like to think about it like a reporter in Afghanistan, Like
Yeah.
I was literally just sitting in the eye of the fire, watching everything burn, watching him inside all these groups and like harass people.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get in that, right? Because
Well, now you kind of are in it, right?
yeah, yeah, because it's also kind of like prison logic where like, okay, you see something happen, you don't get involved unless you have to. Um,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it's like, man, okay, I kind of like the rush of like being friends with somebody like this, being in a group like this, because they're doing all this crazy shit and they're owning all these people, and technically I'm on the winning side of this, even if I'm not participating in it. Um, and that group it was established around the base Huggy Town, and it consisted of Jared, Halt Account, Boo Boy, Blake, and probably a couple other people as well. I can't really recall who else, but they were all in a riot chat together, and they would just go after all these groups. They go after Imperium. They went after Infrared. They were successful in taking down Infrared, and almost successful with Imperium. I think Jared pretty much got them at one point, but they never really like
They
ended
never
the
really
group.
played.
Obviously, he had Boo Boy inciting for so long. He's actually probably one of the most notorious insiders in the history of the server, just for how long he was in Imperium and all the bases he got. Um, he got very close to them for Jared. He's one of Jared's biggest simps. Um,
Interesting.
and admittedly, I kind of was too at the time, in a sense of like, okay, yeah, I pretty much like rode every decision he made, um, because I thought it was funny. I thought it was fun, and it was different and interesting. But there started to come a point where the moral like it got way too out of hand,
You
and
don't
to
have
a
to get
point
too
where
into detail. We all sort of probably know that Jared is,
well, I mean, I'll
yeah,
touch on it. I mean, there's nothing like too egregious, right? But I mean, it got to a point where obviously, in this community, there's a lot of doxing.
Yeah, I'm sure
There's a
there was a
lot
lot of
of
doxing and shit like
yeah,
that.
there's a lot of like harassment to that degree. And he started doing that, which I wasn't a fan of, obviously. Like he
Yeah.
sent, I believe he like found Fee's address or like found him on Google Maps and like sent him a pizza or like sent him like pictures of like this truck in his like front yard and shit,
What the fuck?
and like try to get him to do some really bad stuff.
Yeah.
I won't get into that.
No.
But anyways, yeah. Anyway, so that was kind of an aspect of it. Also, side note before I get into the other stuff, he is also the reason I started doing my podcast in the first place.
I was
He
gonna
was the
ask about
reason.
that. That was one
He
of
was
my
the
questions.
he was the reason that I got a lot of guests in the first couple of episodes.
Because
Like I
Jared was
Tristan,
getting you guests.
yeah, I Tristan, Jack, all those people. He had those contacts, and he was also feeding me questions to ask them. So in a way, it was like, okay, I'm gonna use you to like mess with these people and expose them and like get them to like say shit in interviews. But at the same time, I was getting what I wanted, and I was getting these cool gotcha interviews and like these
So he,
really cool
he kind
people
of
on.
helped you launch the Dr. Ender Pickles thing then.
Oh, absolutely. Without him, I don't think the show would have taken off like it did, and it wouldn't have like gotten the types of players that it got on. My I Tristan interview is probably the most well performing one on my channel. I have to see how many views it's
Yeah.
at now. I can check really
So,
quick, but I know that it's
for those
gotten
of you out there
very high.
in the community that maybe aren't aware, Bezo is kind of the OG 2B2T podcaster. He's done interviews with so many famous players. It's well worth checking out if you haven't already. It's definitely a good channel to watch.
Yeah, we're almost at 40 interviews now. The I Tristan interview is at 28K views
I'm
at this
looking at
point.
all your old episodes now, and it's like all these old players, like Police Mike and Jack and I
Yeah, it's kind of
Tristan.
crazy. And the funny thing about Police Mike too, obviously that ended up being the fake Police Mike.
Yeah,
He was friends with Jared at the time. He was also leaking stuff from Imperium, and like that was one of the people that Jared recommended. He had no idea either that that was a fake Police Mike. And then obviously later on, I ended up interviewing fake Mike and the actual Police Mike, like in the same interview. So it's kind of like a retribution for that interview.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
yeah, so that was something that was a positive that I got out of my friendship with Jared, right? But I think the absolute tipping point for that friendship, and this is what kind of pushed me into the next era of
So are we
my
still
time
in
on 2B.
2018 right now? Like what time?
No, we've moved. I mean, throughout 2018, me and Jared were really cool. I would say by 2020, I kind of came back into the community, and I was still friends with Jared. Obviously, I reconnected with him because it had been a while. I took a break from like early 2019 to COVID.
Uh-huh.
Um, but obviously when COVID hit, everybody was back on 2B2T because they had all this free time and no way to spend it. And
You
so,
started the KOS Assassins, right? At that time, a group called the KOS Assassins.
technically, I started that back in 2014. It's
Oh,
kind of like a LARP group, right? Like it was just kind of like to troll Sato 86, and the only member was Drew Bookman. And so I took the name later on, um, and made a PvP group. Actually, you're right. When I came back in 2020, I made a PvP group called the KOS
mm-hmm.
Assassins with that name, and it included a lot of people that were friends with Jared. It included a lot of like PvPers that kind of were in his circle, and we did a lot of stuff that was not reported on or was misreported on. Like for example, the induction of Fit, the Guardsmen induction of Fit.
Oh, you guys
Uh,
crashed that?
that was us. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was Tomad. He was in Chaos Assassins. He was the one who came up and blew them up,
I remember
and
that. I was there.
Unco Chad got the credit for it, which
Yeah.
really sucked. And that was also kind of a component in the nuclear bomb that happened between me and Jared,
Well,
and with the group.
let's slow down a little bit to talk more about it.
Yeah,
Because this is something I was actually involved with, the whole Guardsman thing. Um, so we start the Guardsman in early 2020, and then it seemed like we were sort of your main griefing target for a while. At least the Guardsmen were. You and your other PvPers would be showing up at the homeland, which was kind of like a giant spawn base, and be PvPing all the time. That was my introduction to you. Was people complaining to me that they're getting killed, and I'm like, just stay offline, guys. Just stay offline. Don't fight
Right,
me.
and I mean that was kind of the only interesting thing going on at that time was what the Guardsmen were doing. So
And then y'all crashed the fit initiation, which
right.
honestly made the video better. You know,
Oh, absolutely,
it
absolutely,
made it
yeah.
way more
And
exciting.
it sucks because it's like, oh yeah, we made your video interesting, and then you're gonna go give credit to Imperium. Like, thanks, appreciate it. Um,
I
I
don't
mean,
think who does Fit
Tet
credit in the video for? I don't think he credits anyone.
he credits Unco Chad. Yeah,
He does. I'll have to
yeah.
rewatch it. I don't
And I
remember.
mean, technically, okay, well, let's get into technicals with this, right? So Uncle Chad was involved, right? He was involved in us going to blow it up, right? He gave us technically the intel that they were going to have an induction there, right?
Uh huh.
But me and Tomad got there first. Tomad actually got there a couple minutes before I did. I was sitting at the portal when everything was going down, and he had gone through first, and he was like, look, I just got to do it. I'm just going to go and do it. We can't just sit around. I can't wait on you. I just have to go. And I was like, yeah, you need to go in and do it. Just get it. And so he went in and blew him up, and right after he did it, I was right behind him flying into render distance.
Okay,
And
let me stop you. For those in the audience who are wondering what the hell we're talking about, um, there's a Fit video called "A Hitman Tried to Kill Me on 2B2T," and that's the video we're referring to.
yeah, and so technically Unco was involved, Imperium was involved. They supplied us with the information, but ultimately they weren't the ones that got the kill, right? It was someone in my group, and we actually flew out there and did it. They did not fly out there and do it. They ended up showing up later when a lot of the action had ended.
Yeah.
And unfortunately they got the credit, and that's how a lot of FitMC videos go. I mean, if you want to be honest about it, I mean, the history is written by the victors, right? And unfortunately, neither me nor anybody else in the group had connections to Fit to make sure that the accuracy of the story was told. That was told by people that already had connections to him, like Emperor, that wanted clout. And that's how a lot of stories go. Unfortunately, it is what it is. You can't be too salty about it because sometimes it works out in your favor, and and it's not necessarily a bad thing when it does. But the repercussions of that were really really bad because a lot of the people, this was something that like our group anticipated, right? The Fit video,
Hmm.
because we knew that we did that. We were like, okay, awesome. Like our group's going to get out there like the Guardsmen, and we're going to be known as their like true opposition, and it's going to be like this big war on 2B, and that's what the narrative's going to be. It's going to be so cool.
Hmm.
And so we were all really really excited. And obviously the video came out. It wasn't like that,
Yeah.
and a lot of the group decided that because the clout was robbed, right, by Imperium, it's like, oh, well, why are we in this group that's never going to get into a Fit video despite no matter what they do? They could literally go and kill Fit during his Guardsman induction, and we can't even get into a video. We should just go to Imperium. We should just leak to Imperium. And so I would say about 3 or 4 members decided together that they were just going to leak everything, personal information included, like
Oh my
docs
God.
information, uh, to Imperium. And then also I had, obviously it was a group of people that worked with Jared as well.
So they
Another
okay. So these are not
another
nice individuals, basically, is what we're getting
No,
at.
no, these are all like mini Jareds pretty much. And I was surrounded by those people for quite a while. And I had been in that culture obviously with Jared before that.
Yeah.
Um, so I was used to it at the time. But it was kind of just like a colony collapse and like a domino effect where it all just comes back on you. And it's like, man, like you're feeling what you witnessed, right? Like I'm feeling what I witnessed other people feel as a result of the people that I hung out with. And
Hmm.
it fucking sucked. It was
So
horrible.
KOS
And I
assassins
had never
died or
understood the
something.
gravity. I never understood the gravity of it. I mean, we're always rising, obviously, but that incarnation of it definitely died in that moment.
So was that a
Um,
rock bottom like moment for you on the
oh yeah,
server, or
it was horrible. Yeah, it was horrible. Like I never felt such a Well, I mean, I had felt something similar, obviously, with Sato and Shenandoah and all of that, but nothing this horrible. Like this really, which kind of dug the knife in all the way this time, because it was not just on the server; it was like personal harassment as well from Imperium and Jared.
Wow.
Now the Jared aspect comes. That's another part to this. It's a twofold incident. So at the time, Jared and me were still very close, and he was entrusting me with a lot of personal information about his relationship with Halt Account. And some of your viewers might have seen it, some of you haven't. If you haven't, go watch the video on my channel, The Trial of Jared and Halt Account, and you can kind of get an idea of how tumultuous and toxic their relationship is.
Yeah,
Um,
I watched that. That is a crazy watch. It's the drama is
yeah,
very
it also
wild.
it also kind of gets into a lot of what ended up causing Jared to come after me was me deciding that I didn't feel comfortable uh, keeping his secrets anymore, especially the stuff that he was telling me about Halt Account and the stuff that he said that he was doing to her and
Okay.
getting people to do to her. Um,
Well,
that
I
being,
don't even
I,
know what you're talking about anymore. I know they had a really abusive relationship, but
he
anyways,
claimed that he was getting her family to beat her up and kick her out of the house. That's what he
what?
told me at the time. And
Okay.
so, and obviously that's not something that I could encourage or even, I didn't
Yeah,
want to keep that a secret for
that's pretty
him.
horrendous.
Yeah, because it's completely just disgusting. And I thought that Halt was on my side in this, right? Because I was taking her back. I was like taking her side on this. I was like, hey, this is like really messed up because she was like really upset and like in my DMs about it, and it was just like a whole thing. And I was like, yeah, like this is not cool. So I ended up telling two people in my group in KOS that were also friends with Jared. And of course, they ended up going straight to Jared and being like, hey, yeah, he just told us this. And so Jared's like, okay, you've crossed me. You've breached my trust. I told you not to say anything about this. And now I'm going to give them all of your information.
So,
And so that's how Imperium ended up getting my docs in the first place. Is
if those
Jared gave
out there in the audience are listening, Jared basically doesn't play anymore, but don't talk to him ever.
or if you do talk to him, don't tell him anything about your life, even the smallest detail, because he's somebody that has gone to extreme lengths to get people's personal information, and he's very good at it.
I
Um,
mean, a lot of people out there know that he's really, really dangerous, but we've got players that watch our channel that are brand new players, or we've got people that are
right.
in DonFuer that joined in 2021 or 2022, and they
And
don't know a lot of
he's
this stuff.
gotten a little taste of his own medicine now too. That kind of came back on him because he's
Yeah.
now got his personal information out there as well. So he's not as safe as he was back then to be doing a lot of the stuff that he did back then. So he's a very different person.
Another group
Um,
that's now, well, it sort of died and then came back, but Imperium back in 2017, 2018, 2019, I suppose as well. Imperium was nasty. Like they
oh
were
yeah, they were
very
horrible.
dangerous. They would
Yeah,
they would
they're
dox
nothing like how
people.
they.
They would
Yeah,
grief PvP. They were just, they were very, very dangerous, not a friendly group, but they were also extremely powerful. And then apparently what killed them was the Phobos thing, right?
yeah. Phobos destroyed the group. It made a lot of really active people quit because what can you really do after that? Everyone's information is out there. Nobody wants to like do anything anymore because it's like such a
Yeah.
everyone's just getting fucked. Everyone's just getting fucked. All their accounts are fucked. Everything is just ruined.
There was this age on the server of mega groups, basically. In
Oh yeah,
so Rusher happened. There was a huge explosion of thousands of very small groups, and then as time goes on, as we go into 2017 and 2018, there's a period of consolidation where those groups get massive, and we end up with basically a handful of really big groups.
right.
Voco,
But
the
it,
Masons, Imperium,
yeah, at the same time, you have to realize that when that consolidating happened, you're taking in a lot of people that might not be the most trustworthy. So those groups didn't necessarily last. Um,
Yeah.
in the long run, because they had people in there that uh, were inevitably going to backstab, leak, rat people, like what happened with Phobos.
Right.
So
Right. It
they're all
was
ticking
very,
time bombs.
very hard to, have a large functioning group like that. I think the last truly mega group on the server was II, but that was mostly fueled. That wasn't really fueled by Russia. That was fueled by the just COVID lockdowns, basically.
Yeah, and FinMC as well. I mean, he made a lot of videos on
And
II.
and fit. That's true. And fit. But anyway, so you have this falling out with Jared, and the KOS Assassins goes under, and you're sort of lost at this point, I guess, right? And when do you get in with Orson? How does that start?
So, after that period, I was very much considering just literally never coming back to 2B2T ever again, because it was such a terrifying experience to kind of be faced um with what I had witnessed upon other people, to be really to really take in
Hmm.
what had happened. Um it was at a point where I really didn't consider not coming back. And I ultimately, what ended up making me come back was just stepping back and not um, being reactionary, and just accepting the fact that, hey, like, this is all meaningless. Like, this could be worse. First of all, like, this information could be worse. I actually got very lightly doxxed in the grand scheme of things. I've seen a lot worse, and I definitely still had enough of a position to go and do something else, and I still had friends in the community that I'd made as a result of leading the KOS Assassins.
Hmm.
So I ended up joining II for like a week, and being friends with Baki for like a week, and just kind of like meeting new people and like reacclimating into things. And then I would go on to hang out with Jake the Snake, because he was somebody that I became very good friends with as well, while I was running the group. And we ended up deciding to make a base together, which was called the Bat Cave. And through that base, I met several other people that I would end up remaining friends with to this day. One of those people being Smeek, who is probably my absolute, like, closest friend I've ever made on Anarchy. Orson's probably number two. Sorry, Orson. But like, Smeek is probably the closest friend I've ever made on Anarchy. I've met her several times in real life. She was the first person from 2B that I've ever met. She's just a very genuine person. And honestly, that experience of meeting somebody on 2B that I could really trust, and like letting my guard down again, that was really tough, but it was really refreshing to have that experience again, and it be genuine this time, and it be somebody that isn't doing like really really fucked up shit. Um,
Hmm.
and there's people like that just play and just really enjoy the server like I did. And so we played at Batcave for a while, and we decided, hey, let's just start up KOS Assassins again. Um, like, let's just get that going again. So we ended up creating that group again. This time with Jake the Snake, and then a lot of the stuff with like J balls and all that ended up coming out. Like Jake started to kind of get into his controversies, and by that time, Batcave was already gone. It had already been nuked by
Didn't Orson start going after Jake the Snake?
yeah, that he was also going after Jake at the time, but me and Orson still hadn't really like come into each other's
Contact?
orbit yet.
Okay.
Um, and Batcave got griefed by Foreskin, so that was out of the equation, and we were kind of PvPing at spawn. And me and Smeek decided, hey, like, this is kind of creepy, like some of the stuff that Jake is doing,
Yeah.
and obviously, like, I mean, I wouldn't say the same thing now, because looking back, it's like, okay, live stream fails happen all the time. Like, I don't think it was that deep, but at the
Not
time, like,
really.
a lot of the like paranoia and like anger at Jake the Snake was like at an all-time high. And so we were like, let's just like have fun with this and just like nuke his shit. So I ended up making the video of me griefing Jake's base that he had, like a stream base, and bed trapping him and like crystal PvPing him. And that was when I decided, man, I really want to start doing more on my channel, and like doing different stuff on 2B and finding different ways to play the game, because this is all really really exciting stuff, like the griefing aspect of 2B. And so going off of that, KOS kind of started to dwindle out. Like we had a few more scuffles with Jake, but I was looking for something else to do on 2B, and that's when I got a message in pre-June from Orson asking if anybody wanted to grief Minecraft servers. And all I had really known of Orson prior to that was us griefing like a Guardsman base and like him raging in my DMs about it and us being like mortal enemies because of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know what, fuck it. Like, build bridges, don't burn them down. I was like, let's just grief servers because I love griefing random servers. I did it with Jared in the past when we just had a fucking notepad full of IPs, and I was like, let's just do it. And so I start griefing servers with him, and that's when I start to understand the complexity of the system that he and Rfresh had created,
Yeah, the
which is
Copenheimer thing.
Copenheimer. Yes, it's the it scans for open Minecraft servers. It's much more than like the notepad that me and Jared had. Um, and it literally was what I was looking for because it was just a new way to play the game that I got a little taste of with Jake. And me and Orson, through doing that, realized, man, we have a lot in common. The way that we think and the way that we strategize, and we both have like these pros and cons that we kind of balance each other out with. I wouldn't say that one of us overpowers the other in terms of like our decision making. It's just like we're kind of like two puzzle pieces that literally fit perfectly and form like fucking Voltron, you know? And so from that point forward, we just kind of gained this trust and like respect for each other
Fifth
that would lead
column
to
is
a lot of really
Voltron.
funny stuff. Yeah,
The
it's
fifth
literally
column is
Voltron, right?
Voltron.
It's literally like our brainchild of just like sheer gay manipulation and insanity. I think that's the best way to describe it. Um and like we've really taught each other a lot, and like it literally, I think without, if I had never like fallen into fifth column, I don't think I would have matured on the server and like thought about it in the way that I do now. I think that was really kind of the missing piece that I needed in terms of like the server in general going forward.
Wasn't it originally called the Clinton Foundation?
No, that was just a brief stint where like we just called it the Clinton
No, no, it
Foundation.
was though. It was like
Maybe before I joined, fifth column was around way before I joined as well.
I was
Is when you
there. I
guys,
was there when Orson started it, and at the
yeah,
time,
when with Sakia and Pepsi Boy and all those people.
I was like, hey, if you keep doing this, you're gonna destroy your rep. Because we were both in the Guardsmen together, and
Yeah.
he had some like random base that he wanted to grief, and I'm like, I mean, I guess if you want to go grief it, you can go grief it. But then he kept griefing more and more, and I'm like, hey, like eventually people are gonna figure this out, and you're gonna be in deep shit. Like the community's gonna be mad at you, and
Right, and now you're a happy little griefer
and
with us,
he
D.
was a fuck no. What are you talking about? But no, like
Whatever.
he he basically was like, I'm gonna embrace it. I'm gonna embrace the chaos and the controversy, and he was okay with it. That was the path that he wanted to go down, and there was no way I could stop him. And for a while, we had a falling out over some bullshit that had to do with the Guardsmen, but that's a mess. That whole business.
Yeah, I think I was around for a bit of that. I mean, I always love some guardsman chaos, but
Yeah.
I was glad when all that kind of
Do you
subsided
remember?
because
Do you remember the Watchmen?
I don't remember the Watchmen at all. I don't think I was involved in that.
You had to have been, right?
I don't
So
think so.
so wait, they're not called the Watchmen, were they? I can't remember the name of this group, but at some point, Orson got kicked out of the Guardsmen, and this is when Joey was basically taking over the Guardsmen, and Orson created this group called, I think it was called the Watchmen, and he did like an incursion at the homeland where he built a giant obsidian statue of Joey Coconut to like make fun of the Guardsmen and stuff. And I could have swore you were involved with that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think we both have this thing where it's like people with huge egos literally drive us up a wall. Like we will do anything in our power to break someone's ego. And Joey Coconut has one of the biggest egos on 2B2T.
Well, back
Um,
at that point in time, I was on Joey's side. I was like, you know, hey, Orson's like
well, I
attacking
mean,
the group that he used to be
do
in.
you also
What the
have
hell?
quite a big ego? You also have quite a big
Oh
ego.
no,
I will say,
I do.
you've mellowed out quite a lot, though.
Yeah.
Like I think ever since the Connect Four stuff, I don't want you to like get PTSD, but ever since that, like it's kind of like kicked you in the nards a bit and made you realize like, hey, I'm not this like indestructible uh
Yeah.
like pyramid of like unity. Like everything could literally get like Thanos snapped away in like an instant,
Yeah,
and
well
there's
that
nothing
that
I can do
happens to
about it.
everybody. I mean,
Yeah, it happened to me. I
you
mean,
get put on your
everything literally collapsed for me, right? It's a humbling experience that needs to happen because
right.
then you don't take it for granted in the moment and you don't go fucking AWOL with power when you have it.
Yeah. Yeah, ultimately that was a healthy thing for our group and for me because it was a moment where we could take stock of everything we had and chart a new direction. I don't even want to say it's a new direction. We just
did you just say chart a new direction?
I said chart a new
Oh,
direction.
damn.
We we took stock of everything we had and we just refocused the group on specifically what we're good at and nothing more basically. We're specializing. And anyways, so you meet Orson through the you just he's like, "Hey, want to grief servers together?" And you just start griefing servers and you become really good friends with him.
Yeah, he put out like an all call in pre-June, the pre-June 2B2T Discord, and I was like, you know what, I'm not doing anything today. I might as well.
Interesting. Interesting. So then this is weird and I don't really remember all the details of this because it was like a almost 2 years ago. But at some point, uh, Herm brings Orson back into the Guardsmen, and then Orson brings you in and like makes you leadership.
Did that happen like that? I don't
Do you
remember.
remember that?
I remember me coming in there as like some
He
sort
gave
of
you
like,
distinguished rank in there.
yeah. I think that there was like a special committee or something that he was trying to make or something like that, where he brought me in to like help remodel the Guardsmen with them.
I can't
Where
tell.
I wasn't even like inducted yet, but I was like part of like the remodeling or whatever. I think I
Yes,
know what you're talking about, but I did later get inducted. I mean, I am a Guardsman now.
I remember
Um,
when that
but at the
happened.
time
I
I
was
wasn't.
like, that was one of my first exposures to because I had seen the Doctor Ender Pickles thing. I knew about that, but then you started griefing the Guardsmen back in 2020, and then didn't really hear from you for a while, and then that happened, and I'm like, how did this happen? Like, how did first of all, how did this guy who used to be griefing the Guardsmen become friends with Orson, and then why is Orson getting him in the Guardsmen? I was just so like miffed by that. I'm like, what the fuck, Because for me, it's like if somebody's I don't know. My mindset has changed quite a bit just in the last few years, even on this. But back then, I was very much like, oh, you griefed us, okay, you're like permanently an enemy, and um, now it's more like, okay, you griefed us, we're not gonna trust you anymore, but there's not as much like a hate behind it. It's just okay, put this person in a little box that just says they are who they are, and don't take it personally.
Yeah, because I mean everybody's a griefer now, even if they want to admit it or not. Like I'm sure there's things you've done and there's things Joey has done that nobody will ever know about. But you took care of business, right? And I mean, there's small people in the server too that just like to grief independently. You can't really judge someone's character by the base they grief anymore because it's kind of synonymous with it playing an anarchy server.
Sure, sure. Um, well, I've got to say your story is very interesting. It seems like you had a lot of you remembered a lot of details about the early days and stuff, which I think is impressive. Um,
Hey, as much as I can, honestly, a lot of it's
yeah,
really, really blurry. Even stuff from 2018 is kind of hard to like follow through.
yeah, yeah. It's all so long ago, man. So, let's wrap it up with one kind of final question. What direction do you see the server going in? This is a very broad question, but
Yeah, this is the question I ask everybody at the end of my interview, D. What the fuck? This is like
oh, really?
copyrighted
Is this
or
copy
something. This
paste
has to
that?
be. Yeah, it literally is. I was like, oh, well, what do you think the server's going to be like in the future? I literally asked that to everybody.
Really? Okay. Well,
Yeah, plagiarism.
maybe I'm taking inspiration from you, okay?
You know what? My idea for the future of this community is deloaded finding an original question to ask people at the end of his interviews. That's my outlook on the future.
It's a good point. Actually, think about it though. You've asked that question to, you know, 50 something people who you've interviewed, but no one has ever asked
Mhm.
you.
That's a good point, D. I guess I didn't think about it like that. Kind of Uno reversed me there.
Yeah.
My outlook on the future of the server is I hope that I'm in the Netflix series. That's all I'm gonna say. Hope I'm in
Well,
the
with
Netflix
the
series.
the Netflix series, dear
I do.
God.
I'm being honest. I mean, let's take a look back at like the scene kids of like the 70s, 80s, and all like the weird niches from back then. Right? They always get like a Netflix series one day.
No shit.
Uh, yeah, Tubi's gonna it's gonna happen to Tubi. I guarantee
Imagine
it. There's
it's
too much shit on the server.
2050 and Minecraft is gone, I guess. Something happened to it and it's gone. And now they're making documentaries about it.
Well, by then we'll have the sequel game. So
Minecraft 2.
yeah,
Oh my God.
then Tubi will still be on 1.19.
It took forever to update for 1.12. It takes triple that to go to
Yeah.
1.20.
But yeah, I'm getting excited for the Netflix docuseries, obviously. I hope I get a big part in it. I might even be producing it. That would be really nice. I love making those kind of things. And then also the To Be retirement home that I'm opening up. I'm really excited for that as well.
Are you going to
It's
join the Graybeard Geezers when you're old enough?
the big idea with the To Be retirement home is that only To Be players can come. You'll be separated into different wards of the retirement home. You have new players, old players, rushers, that kind of stuff. We have our own little wars in the retirement home. I think it would be really cute. You have to be a 2B player to enter though.
Jared drives past somebody's room in his wheelchair and throws the apple pudding at them or something.
Yeah, fucking spike somebody's like fucking IV tap or something.
What?
He'd have to be in like a straight jacket if he ever got invited to the 2B retirement home.
Oh my gosh. That's a funny thought. That's a funny thought. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I think we had a nice conversation, and hopefully our audience learned something new or something cool about the history of the server.
And if you haven't, then you should go subscribe to my channel, Bezopazan on YouTube,
Yeah, I
or
was gonna ask you to
also
plug all your
you can do
stuff.
both of these things too. You can also go subscribe to the Fifth Column because I'm also putting videos on there. I edit for both channels. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, guys, that was Bezopazan. He is, very, very interesting player. He's a griefer, kind of a different perspective than what we have, but hey, he knows a lot of history. So,
yeah, and he's also the hottest twink on 2B2T. So
oh my God, I'm gonna have to cut that.
wait, why?
Okay,
You
thanks
should
for
keep. Can
watching,
you keep that
everybody.
in? Oh my god.